Hello everybody. Next up we return to FA Cup action in our fourth round visit to Pride Park, where we'll be hosted by Derby County. Kick-off is at 7:45pm and TV coverage is on something called ITV4. There's no extra time, etc. This is the last round in which replays are possible. So, Derby then. Well, it's been a bit of a soap opera for them in recent years. They currently find themselves in League 1, or in Old Money Division 3. Their appearance at that level followed their relegation from the Championship. The 55 points they earned over the course of the season would have been enough to have seen them finish in 17th place. However, a clutch of points deductions put paid to all that. These sanctions all came around as a result of then-owner Mel Morris placing the club into administration, something that cost them 12 points. They were then relieved of a further 9 points due to accounting irregularities arising principally from the methods used to write down the value of players in the books. All this became a bit too much for the spud-faced boss Wayne Rooney, who had apparently been financing hotel bills for away trips out of his own pocket. Well, that was the explanation he gave to Colleen for his credit card bills. He departed in June shortly before the administrators managed to unload the company to property developer David Close. Things appear to have settled down now, though the idea of property developers owning clubs does not have a great history as far as I recall. After a spell with Liam, son of Leroy, Rossignol in caretaker charge, the Rams alighted at Rotherham, where they relieved the Millers of Paul Warne, together with pretty much all of his coaching staff. They're on a bit of a run in the league at the moment. After a mixed spell in September/October, partly during the Rossignol tenure and partly during the bedding-in period for Warne, they've gone on a 14-match unbeaten run. Their last reverse coming at Ipswich back on the 21st of October. 6 of those 14 games ended in draws, including a run of 3 in a row back in November/December. That, plus their mixed form during the earlier part of the season, sees them comfortably in the playoff zone rather than in the automatic places. Derby have 50 points from 27 games, which sees them in 4th spot, 8 points behind Sheffield Wednesday in 2nd place, and 9 points clear of Peterborough, who are currently the team sitting just outside the playoffs. Daisy tells me that they've been under a number of restrictions as regards transfers. The agreement with the authorities as part of their exiting administration process precludes them bringing in anyone for whom they'd have to pay a fee, and that includes loan fees. There was a need to replace no fewer than 18 players whose contracts were at an end in the summer. That includes Ravel Morrison, who went to DC United. Thus they entered into the free transfer market, picking up David McGoldrick from Sheffield Hypocrisy in the process. Now 35, he's their top scorer this season, though we like to remember him for announcing his international retirement shortly after receiving Ireland's Player of the Year award a few years back. It's all about the timing. Another vaguely familiar name to arrive was former Villa midfielder Conor Hourihane. Another Irish international, he spent his last 2 seasons away from Villa Park, at Swansea and latterly alongside McGoldrick up at Bramall Lane. He's a member of that club of players who've scored goals at all of the top 4 levels of the professional game. Their first choice custodian was another free transfer arrival in the form of Joe Wildsmith. Unlike McGoldrick and Hourihane, who were without clubs, Wildsmith had actually been offered a new deal at Sheffield Wednesday. However, he was well down the pecking order at Hillsborough, having made only 3 league starts last year, leading him to decide that the Owls' offer was worth declining in favour of first-team football at Pride Park. He's been backed up by Scott Loach, whose appearances this term have been limited to the EFL Trophy. A further option might have been Joseph Anang, who joined on a season-long loan from us. However, a broken arm early in the season limited his opportunities, and we called him back from the loan last week. So if he does make any sort of appearance on Monday, it'll be on our bench rather than theirs. I think we'll move on now to the wild and wacky world of association football. The football gods are in playful mood, allowing Sunderland's 15-year-old Chris Rigg to put the ball away for what would have been a late FA Cup winner against Fulham, then getting the linesman to flag for the admittedly obvious offside in the build-up. 15 years old, for Pete's sake. I've got ailments older than that. Meanwhile, hats off to ITV for their coverage of the Brighton vs Liverpool match. Like the BBC, where any criticism of their beloved Reds is a sackable offence, ranked alongside not having a TV licence, ITV were quite happy to do an analysis of a number of quite disgusting challenges and actually asked the question as to why the red cards they deserved weren't issued. I guess Brighton, whose goal was possibly offside, but wasn't, were lucky that VAR was actually switched on this time around. Meanwhile, we await the publishing of a white paper on the subject of football governance. Among the expected contents is the establishment of an independent football regulator, whose remit will include powers to prevent club owners from acting in a manner detrimental to the interest of supporters. Which is fine, but any powers there must be backed up with suitably targeted penalties for non-compliance. We'll wait and see. Let's move on to us. Blimey, I thought we'd been poor of late until I saw Everton. Having said that, you can only beat what's put in front of you, I suppose, and whilst we sat back with our feet up for much of the second half, we still had the better chances, and were easily the better of the two sides on display. Bowen's goals did him a power of good. He's had the appearance of a man lacking in confidence of late, and it was really good to see him try and take on players rather than holding things up and cutting back across the pitch, which has been the case for much of this season. Of course, we shouldn't pass on any further without pausing to note that the result saw the sacking of Lampard Jr. He's now failed to impress at 3 different clubs, and it remains to be seen whether any other club chairman will repeat the mistakes of those at Derby, Chelsea and now Everton, in assuming that, as a manager, he is in fact any good. Still, one doubts that he will be suffering. One suspects he's made much more money out of his payoffs at Chelsea and Everton than he's actually made from managing a team. Since I last put pen to paper, we've said farewell to Craig Dawson. Ballon, as he became known, didn't appear for ages after he first signed for us, and indeed, when he made his first appearance for us, I will admit I'd forgotten he was actually there. However, he instantly endeared himself by his accidental near decapitation of a Southampton player. He went on to be something of a cult figure based on his no-nonsense approach, never giving less than the proverbial 100%. And back in the day when we used to actually score from set pieces, he weighed in with numerous goals, becoming adept at putting the ball away off the top of his shoulder. On departure, you'll have seen his farewell message to supporters, which was a class touch from a player who delayed his departure for half a season to help out the team, despite the difficulties of playing for us with his family halfway up the other end of the country. We wish him well. On the injury front, we'll be without Scamacca, who's been having jabs on his injured knee. Ings has succumbed to the curse of the new signing that has been part of our DNA ever since I can remember, but he would have been ineligible anyway, having played for Villa in the 3rd round. Zuma has a thigh muscle tear. He hasn't had much in the way of luck with his injuries of late, and he hasn't even got a cat to go home and kick these days. Then there's Cornet. He's been in France again, apparently, and is due back at the club on Monday, just as everyone leaves for the Midlands. There seemed to be a further note of exasperation in Mr. Moyes' comment that it would be nice to know whether he's going to be able to start training on Monday. There's something rum about this whole thing. You'd hope that lines of communication would be such that the manager would be the first to know about everything. So let's move on to the prediction. It's a tough one. We're up against a team for whom winning's become a bit of a habit. Throw in a probable sellout in front of the lights and you have all the recipe for an unmitigated, particularly in a week of few cup surprises. On the other hand, on paper, even without the 3 or 4 absentees, we have a multi-million-pound squad against a squad of freebies and loans. So we ought to win, and my bet's going to be made on that basis. The £2.50 that would have been donated to the Lampard Unemployment Fund, and let's face it, if he gets to the food bank there'd be nothing left, it will instead go on a 2-1 win to us, with the caveat that a home win upset would not really be that much of a surprise, particularly if we put out a much weakened side. Enjoy the game.
We're here in the offices of a Late Late Show with the host of a Late Late Show, James Corden.
Hi.
Big West Ham fan.
Yes. And big knees up Mother Brown, man.
Yeah.
Get on the forum at kumb.com. Come on, you irons.